and welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am your host, Denise Walsh. I combine science, scripture, and stories that will inspire you to dive deep, break through your own personal glass ceiling, and design a life of your dreams. Do you feel like you've not been able to make headway in achieving your goals? Or did you start the year pumped, ready to move forward on making things happen and simply lost your way? Things don't need to just get better. They actually can be better. In Design Your Dream Life, I'll show you a proven pathway to take you from where you are now to a life filled with joy, wholeness, success, and fulfillment. I'll give you the keys to not just developing a plan, but taking massive empowered action to make your dreams a reality. Turn roadblocks into stepping stones and leverage the power of gratitude and forgiveness. Let's face it, taking massive empowered action and making your dreams a reality isn't always easy. So I'll be there with you every step of the way. Visit dreamlifetoolkit.com to purchase your copy of Design Your Dream Life, obtain resources, and join our free community. Again, that's dreamlifetoolkit.com. Big welcome back to the Dreamcast. Okay, you guys. So at the end of the day, I feel like my life purpose is to help light a fire within you, right? Within all of us. Because to be honest, my job is not to light a fire under you. My job is to light a fire within you. And I feel like we all have this God-given spark, this God-given passion and purpose that, and things just like we love it and it goes by fast and it's exciting to us. But sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what that is for ourselves. And on the Dreamcast, I love to bring on guests that help us figure out what that spark is for each and every one of us. I also love to bring on guests who have had to overcome challenges and grow into themselves, because it's my firm belief that if we all knew how awesome we were, we wouldn't take things so personally. We wouldn't live in the world of drama. We would truly live in the world of dreams, and we'd let go of jealousy and comparison and feeling not good enough. You know what I mean? Because we would have that inner confidence. And so our next guest, like a lot of us or a lot of our kids throughout the years, grew up being bullied, and he often came home in tears. As a result, he lived his youth and even throughout of his adult life as a person without confidence. He was always seeking outside validation from others, kids, parents, and even from bosses and coworkers. In addition to being an analyst, he chose to spend the last 3 years developing leadership, talent, recognition, and work-life development training programs at a $2 billion company, and became the face of cultural change, which affected the lives of over 700 employees. You guys, he believes in a world where everyone pursues their life fulfillment, waking up each day full of gratitude, grateful and eager to deliver good work to help others and help themselves grow. And throughout the years, he's been able to step out of needing outside validation, having his eyes on what everyone else thought about him, and grew to understand just how awesome he was, and now wakes up every day living a life that he is proud to lead. He shares what he has learned through that journey with America's youth at school, assemblies, and conferences. And you guys, I'm so excited to hear not only his journey, but how he takes his message and delivers it to today's teens. So big Dreamcast welcome to Troy Rice.
Thank you, Denise. That was an incredible bio intro. I really appreciate that.
I wove my own experience with you into your bio. You guys, it's so fun. Troy actually lives in the city that I do. Our kids go to the same school, and we got connected through a mutual friend. And so I love that there's people on a mission just like us in our own backyard. So Troy, I want to hear about your bullying story, because I know this isn't just a one-day event. It actually ripples into years of life, impacting your self-esteem. So what happened to you as a kid?
Yes. And so a couple years ago, I decided to really get vulnerable about this and share more. And being vulnerable is powerful, and people like hearing the truth. And so I would go probably a good 28 years of my life holding and internalizing being bullied as a kid, and finally letting it out, just let the emotions go. I was holding all these deep thoughts and deep emotions in close to my heart, but the perspective that I love sharing in schools is to still lead with kindness. And so what I share is, when I grew up, unfortunately, I was born with two lazy eyes, and so I really couldn't get around that. I had to wear big bifocal glasses to see. And back then, it's not like it is today, where you have the Warby Parkers of the world and the cool glass lenses. It wasn't very attractive, and because of that, I got picked on a lot, and picked on to the point where school was not a safe place for me. I would get on the bus, and I had kids that would knock the glasses off my face, stomp on them, and then I couldn't see. I had to ask for my parents to come get me because I couldn't even go to school. And I experienced that within the school and the hallways. And so I literally would wake up every day not wanting to go to school, and my parents were fearful on what to do. And so one thing that they thought was interesting, though, is I always felt bad for the bully. And I think it's easy when we think of bullying and everything to automatically think about disciplining or having hatred or anger towards somebody that puts you down. But even at a young age, I just felt like there was an understanding there. And so the story that I like to share is, there was a bully that I had in elementary school that I ended up dating in high school, because I felt like there was something there as to why she felt the need to put me down. And there was. And when we were dating, I soon found out that she had a rough childhood at home. She had a rough childhood with her father, and her mom wasn't around that often. And so, in her words, she said when she was younger, it was her way to kind of cope with fitting in and making herself feel better. And so when I talk in schools, I share that experience of vulnerability, because I think bullying is a huge thing today that we need to understand. But I also like to share the perspectives of what it would look like if we chose to understood more instead of just disciplining. And so I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn as well, which breaks down the questions of, instead of just pointing fingers and shaming people that bully others, to ask more questions, see where their life comes from, find a way to talk to their parents, and see if we can help each person. Because in my particular example and others, I've learned that both people carry a certain set of insecurities, whether you're the person being bullied or whether you're the bully themselves. And so how can we help both of those situations get past that?
I mean, how old were you when they are taking your Coke bottle glasses and stomping on them?
Yeah, I was first started in first grade, and it was when I was able to ride the bus. So we had older kids on the bus too. So I think it was anywhere between like first and fourth graders on this bus. And typically it was the older kids that would kind of engage in that.
And so when they're doing that, you said you internalized it. So you stuffed it down. You just kind of were quiet about it. Why did you think they were doing it at that time? How did that impact the view of yourself?
Well, and you mentioned in the intro of no confidence, and I had this feeling that I wasn't worth anything, and that the reason that they were doing it is because I didn't have anything to show. Like, I didn't have any purpose, and like I was soon became the kid that always wore sweatpants, right? And always wore dirty shoes and never got dressed in the morning, because I felt like I didn't matter. And the feeling I had was like, well, they either truly hate me, or they might have a problem themselves. And so like internally, I would just kind of go home and I would just hold it in. And my parents would try to get me to open up about it. But I did this even into an adulthood, and we'll kind of get into this, which is like, I chose to just hold it in the fact that maybe by letting it go, it would make me fearful on change, I guess. And so I got to this point where like me as a person was like this kid that cautiously walked around and only kind of felt safe at home. And I didn't know what it would look like to change, and I didn't want to open up about it. And I don't know if it comes from just this innate feeling of helping people, but my parents would like suggest going in and talking to parents and principals and reprimanding bus drivers and all that. And I would even at that age, I would hold them from doing that because I didn't want to return the favor. I didn't want to hurt somebody else that hurt me. And as crazy as that sounds, I've always been the person that held forgiveness close to my heart.
So, I mean, you guys, I've got a kindergartner and a third grader. And as a mom, if someone was doing that to my child, Mama Bear would come out. We would be like so protective because we have so much love for our kids. And I'm assuming your parents were similar. They had so much love for you. But what's so interesting is that the bully's words sometimes speak louder than our parents. So our parents can say, I love you, you're great, you're awesome, but yet there was still a piece of you that didn't feel good enough. And so walk me through living life kind of under the radar, because you don't want to be noticed. You don't want to obviously pull more attention to yourself. So you're living life under the radar. When do you start realizing, okay, I guess I do have something to add? Like, when does that inner strength start to build?
Yeah. So in fifth grade, so it started to at least get a little better for me in fifth grade. In fifth grade, I had eye surgery. And what's interesting about this story is my parents wanted to look into it because of how I felt. They really felt like I was beat down so much. So we looked into it, and back when I was in fifth grade, there was no LASIK. So they went in there and they literally cut the muscle in both eyes and then tied them together. And so the success rate was not as high as it would be today. And I'm fortunate that I came out of that and still today don't have to wear glasses. And so it was a huge, huge impact on my life. And so what happened, though, is when I got that glimpse of, hey, I don't look like this anymore. Hey, people might accept me. I slowly tried to basically skate through everywhere I could by allowing other people to validate what I did. And it had the shape and form of wearing the same clothes, listening to the same music. I played sports. I was somewhat athletic in high school. And so I would even do exactly what friends or coaches would tell me to do, even if I felt like sticking up for myself, because I didn't want to have that feeling like I did when I was younger of somebody disagreeing or saying something to me. And so I would literally build this seeking validation mentality all the way until about 2 years ago, where I would still work my way up in the corporate world. And you mentioned a lot of cultural change at a large company. But I realized that every time I would wake up, I would do things for other people. Every time I did something, I would do something for other people. And it doesn't mean that you don't help people, but I got to a place where I was never doing anything for myself. And then what happened was, since I was seeking validation and in some aspects I wasn't exactly getting what I thought I should. And so sometimes we put the effort in and we expect the reward. And by setting that expectation and continuing that path for years, I got to a point where they didn't line up. And I got so frustrated at the corporate world for not recognizing me for some efforts that I started blaming them. I started playing the why are they doing this game? Why can't they give this to me? Why do I put the effort in? And it wasn't until I completely hit a breaking point where I said, there's got to be a better way than this. There's got to be a better life than this. And so I finally picked up a practice of gratitude and meditation that led to two things that I love in life, which is agriculture and education. And then from there, I leaped into creating this agriculture company called Farm Brigge. And now I share that story in middle schools and high schools and universities with students, and trying to get them to not lead a life of validation, starting at a young age, and start thinking about the things that they love. Because I believe that when you do something you love, that's when you truly offer value to others.
I'm like freaking out over here because because I hear you saying, okay, so not only did you have your eyes on others for validation, right? You were seeking their approval. So your self-worth was based on what someone else did or did not do. And so if they said, Troy, you're amazing, you were like, woohoo, I'm amazing. But if they didn't, you felt that too. Kind of just like the bully. Well, I must not be amazing then. And so it gives so many other people our power over ourselves, doesn't it? And so at some point you were like, all right, I have to think I'm amazing myself. I can't leave it to other people. I can't have other people decide this for me, because then if they withhold it, then I get emotionally upset. And I find this so often with teens and adults, because I think so many times we are living in this world of looking for external validation, wondering what to do, not knowing our next step, looking for everyone else to kind of guide us, probably because we spent 20, 25 years of our life being told what to do. And then when we get into adulthood, we're kind of left to ourselves. But one story I wanted to bring up and see what you experience when you go into the high schools is I'm working on a Dream Life teen journal right now. And so this past week, I went into Hudsonville High School and met with their English class. And I got to interview them about current struggles and solutions to those struggles, and what are, inner strengths or skills they want to learn or feel like they could learn, things like that. And one of the things they said that I thought was so interesting was, if they don't tag someone on whatever social media platform they're using, because it's probably not Facebook, I don't know what it is, probably Snapchat, but if they don't tag someone, other people are upset at them. So if they forget or are busy or something, so they're managing their own emotions, but then they're also trying to manage everybody else's emotions because they're afraid that other people are going to be upset at them. And I find that there is first heightened emotions, like everything's emotional when you're a teenager. But then there's, because of the lack of self-confidence and the ease of being mean to each other, they take things so personally. So when you go into the school, you're kind of balancing both. You're saying, all right, build your inner strength, validate yourself, essentially, so you don't need all this external stuff. What's a skill that you teach them in school to do this? What do you find on that topic?
Yeah. So I just wrote an article about this too, because a parent that I'm friends with has a teenage daughter, and she struggles with very similar things that you're talking about, which is like her friends, right? Friends come and go. What happens when you think that somebody likes you and then they turn around and they act completely different when you're not around? And what does that look like? And so basically what I was trying to get to on that is we have to look in at ourselves, because if we're constantly looking out to our friends and we're saying, okay, well, they like me today, but tomorrow they don't. And we're playing these mind games in our head. We're forgetting about how we move forward, which is how are we self-reflecting on what we could have done differently? And so I think it comes down to an understanding, right? Because most times, if you think about a particular situation where you said that this is my best friend today, but then yesterday they all of a sudden they started acting distant, they weren't texting me back, they weren't liking any of my posts. And what if instead of saying they don't like me anymore and then internalizing this, what if we said, all right, let me try and ask better questions so I can understand what's going on in their world? Because most often than not, they're not trying to mistreat you. It's probably they're trying to deal with their own thing, and they're struggling themselves with what that looks like. And so what would it look like to actually just call your friend up and say, hey, what's going on? Like, I want to be there for you. And I noticed that maybe you didn't have time to talk to me the other day. I want to be here for you. So tell me how I can care about you. And so I wrote this article about understanding and an aspect of self-reflection versus seeking approval from people on where you think that you should be every day.
Ooh. What questions could a teenager or adult ask if they're feeling like someone's being rude to them?
So first of all, I would ask of yourself first. I always believe that if you can change yourself, then you can move forward, because a lot of the times you can't physically change somebody else. You can motivate somebody, but you can't change them. So first, I would say, what can I change about myself in this moment? And if it was nothing, let's say like you did nothing wrong, then the next question is, how can I offer a way to care? If I truly believe in this person and I love their friendship or family member, whoever it is, how can I show that I care in this moment and see what that looks like to our relationship? That way I'm putting them first, and I'm realizing that me as a person, I'm best off offering kindness in this moment as opposed to coming up with assumptions.
Do you find that teenagers are emotionally capable of being the better person in this way?
I think it comes with a little bit of effort. And so, you alluded to this earlier, which is by definition, school systems in the industrial age teach people to live with a fixed mindset. And so to tell a teenager to inwardly look at yourself and reflect on what you should do differently doesn't always sit right, because they've lived their entire life not having to do that, right? They lived their entire life by somebody telling them what they should do. This is how you should get up every morning. This is how you should study. This is why you're smart at math. These grades validate who you are. And in reality, you and I both know that that's not true, right? Because, grades don't validate you as a person. Things that people force you to do aren't necessarily things that you usually care about. And so it starts with figuring out who you are and what you care about first. And so like the advice that I offered this dad and my friend is that, could he invite her to at least think about like 2 things that she cares about in life and start there. And then as soon as she figures that out, then she could start to think about what it might look like to actually be that person who that person actually is her true self. And so what all of us really love about each other is truth. And a lot of the times since we have these fixed mindsets that we have to break down, our natural reaction is to speak in abstracts, right? It's to speak in other people's terms. It's to speak in what somebody else taught you. And it's not to speak with what you believe in, which is, I care about family, or I care about love. And so I think it has to start from the foundation, which is, I love talking about this perspective. So like there are times when I get a chance to go in and speak with like 5th grade. And the best way to get at them is to say, hey, you remember when you were 5 years old and you had a parent or somebody that said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And at that point you had no industrial age mindset system in place. All you had was, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be a sports announcer. I want to be on a cover of a magazine, whatever it is. And you had nothing shaping your opinions. And so what I try to get them to do is go back to that place, because that place is where you are being your true self, and figure out what that looks like. And even if you said, I wanted to be a professional basketball player and you don't even play basketball today, think about why you wanted to play basketball, because something about basketball you really cared about. And then when you figure that out, then you can figure out who you really are and what you can offer to the world.
Oh, I have a 3rd grade boy and I'm totally asking him that today.
Oh, all right.
But what I think is really interesting is sometimes we don't give teenagers enough credit. You're exactly right. They were taught, as were we, a fixed mindset in school. And some of it, I'm sure, is necessary. Go stand straight in line, be quiet when the teacher's talking. All of that is, an important life skill. Be respectful, all of that. But we have lost our creativity. We have lost a bit of the imagination, and we have lost a bit of who am I? Because I'm not just one of 25. I'm me, And so you're teaching them a whole new skill set of questions that they can ask themselves and ask others. And when they learn this new skill set, they can do it. I remember, this is a silly example, but I remember I grew up in church and I learned to turn the other cheek, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget this. I remember my sister was being mean, like she was pushing me, and she pushed me down on the ground and she was like hitting me, and I didn't fight back. And I thought to myself, turn the other cheek. And she kept hitting me and I was like, wait a minute. But I remember that because what I was taught in that moment did come through in my actions, and I didn't fight back, and she got in trouble and everything was fine. But I think that often, because teens don't know these questions, they can't ask themselves this. But when they know them, they actually can learn and develop and take action in a new way.
That is so true. I mean, our kids are in the same school. And so Kellen, 1st grade, the other day, he was told by his teacher that he was good at math, right? He was smart at math because he was doing good at it and all that. And I said, well, Kellen, why do you think that you're smart at math? And I was hoping that he would answer the way that I've taught him, which is practice. Because what often happens is we tell people that they're smart at something or they're good test takers. And so what happens is when they come across a challenge, then automatically something flips in their mind and they're like, oh no, I'm not smart anymore. And it was never about that. It's always about the effort. It's always about the practice and the discipline and the way to stick to it. And what I love talking about too is like, even like sports athletes, like a lot of the times when we read journalist articles or whatever, it always talks about like their innate talents and abilities, right? But it completely discounts their practice, their discipline, their 10,000 hours of in a room, dribbling a basketball, whatever it is. And so those are the things that we need to tell our kids about, right? We need to tell them about the efforts and everything, not the mindset of like an abstract version of what smart looks like. Because what happens, like you said, when they go out into the real world and then all of a sudden they get a problem and it seems very similar to what they have in the childhood and they struggle and they're like, oh, shoot, I don't know what to do anymore. I guess I'm not smart at that. I'll go ahead and just do something different.
So what did your son say to your question?
Yeah, he said, because I practice it, Dad. And I said,
that's right. Oh, score.
So, and it's funny. I messaged the teacher. So he's got a substitute teacher right now because his normal teacher is out on maternity leave. And what I think is awesome is the substitute teacher sends us an email once a week and just says, all right, here is an observation of Kellen. Here's a growth of Kellen or whatever. And so I messaged her back and I said, I love this. Thanks for sending this every week. And I really appreciate that. And I shared the story. I said, Kellen came home with math and I told him, and we said, the reason he's doing that is because he practices. He practices at home. He practices at school. And I said, I believe in teaching kids through the growth mindset. And I just wanted to share that with you in case that was valuable. And she sent me a note back and she said, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So
that's so fun. Well, I want to ask you a few more questions about these kids because we know that we don't want to live in a fixed mindset world. We do want to teach them growth mindset. What are some other ways that we can do this at home with our own kids?
Yeah. So first of all, the best book I've ever read is Mindset by Carol Dweck, by hands down, best book ever. But besides that, what I try and catch myself in moments of doing is automatically praise for effort. Like whatever they do, praise for effort. The one other thing that I try to teach too is recognizing without a reward every time. Because every time that you have your son or daughter or whatever do something, if you reward them, they automatically associate to doing something and getting a reward. And what that does is it kind of teaches them to grow up that way, right? It teaches them that, okay, well, I'll do this only if I get a reward. And that's not really what you want to do. And so we try to pause ourselves in moments where we go to reward them because it's natural, right? You want to, oh yeah, well, we should give them this and that, but that's not really the right mindset that you want to lead your kids with. The other piece is, and I was sharing this with a parent friend the other day, which is catching ourselves in moments of 100% discipline all the time. And so what I meant by that is, are we parenting and coaching so many times throughout a day where it becomes less about a moment of learning for the kid and more about like, man, what is mom or dad going to tell me to do again? And I share that because I catch myself doing it, right? Because I want the best for my kids, just like we all do, just like you do. And what I catch myself doing though is spending like every hour that I can trying to get them to do better, but they're a kid, and they need to realize that they're a kid. And so another thing that we try to do too is make sure that we instill fun and not 100% discipline. Even if it's a moment where discipline is needed, sometimes letting it slip for the sake of 100% discipline makes sense.
Awesome. And I want to swing back to the bullying again, because you carried into your adulthood, you were seeking validation. As you grew in your own inner strength, you now teach high schools, middle schools, and it sounds like even elementary school students empathy. And so when we say feel bad for the bully, you're really teaching them empathy to see themselves in someone else's shoes. And I talk to my boys about this as well. I say, if people are mean, it's usually because they're having a bad day. And so we talk about how it's a reflection of their day, not necessarily you. And sometimes you are probably being annoying, but other times it's a reflection on them, and to see yourself in that person's shoes, to not take things so personally. So when you're at schools, I'd love to hear a few ways that we can build empathy with kids. Because when I was at the high school last week, it was a bit interesting. I kind of pretend like I have a bubble around me. And I learned this when I was a counselor, because I can't care more about your life than you do. And so you tell me all this stuff and I have to kind of like not allow it in, especially in a counseling situation. But we also want to have empathy for that person. So it's not that we don't care and we've got a hard shell and, we're just in our own stuff. we want to have empathy, but we also don't want to take things personally, which is a very interesting line. So when I was talking to the class, we were brainstorming about that, because when emotions are heightened, that line can be a bit skewed. So how do you teach empathy to kids?
Gratitude.
Ooh.
And it sounds simple, but it's something that even adults, including myself, struggle with too, right? I build a gratitude practice in the morning and meditation and everything, but it's really hard for young kids to do that. And so most times I come into schools and I ask them about that. And, there's one kid that raised their hand and said, Thanksgiving every time. And it's like, yes, there's that one time every year that we say grateful for something. But I believe it was Tony Robbins that said this at one point, but I don't think it was his phrase, but you can't be curious and angry at the same time. And so being grateful helps ground yourself, and it helps you realize the tremendous things in life that you really have. And it's so more important nowadays than ever because of smartphones and devices and constantly engaged. I mean, we trade boredom for engagement every day of the week. And what that does is it doesn't actually allow us to think about how we could better ourselves personally. And so to be able to have empathy in any situation, we have to have moments where we ground ourselves and bring us back to where we are, right? Sometimes we go through our days and something impacts us emotionally and we automatically get angry about it. And in that moment, if you could just practice gratitude about what you have, how powerful would that be in how you react with others, Because to think about the things in life we get so angry about can seem so petty. And just a 5-minute practice of how great your family is, how great your siblings are, your parents, school systems, where you live, being able to eat, anything like that really helps open you up to understanding other people.
You cannot be curious and angry at the same time. I love that. We have a gratitude jar. So once a week or so, not every day because of life, but can try consistently. We write down the fun things we did or what we're grateful for that week. Someone loses a tooth, or we had a birthday party, or we went sledding, or the things we want to remember. And we put it in a jar. And then on around New Year's time, we read all the fun things that we did throughout the year as we make our dream goal boards for the next year. And so we've got years of these gratitude, sticky notes in a envelope now that we can go back to throughout the years. And it's just a fun way to teach it as a lifestyle rather than, once a year kind of thing.
I love that. I might be stealing that one from you. All right. I love that a lot. Cool.
One question I've been asking my boys on the way to school, and they get so mad at me right now, is I said, so what is one way you can make somebody's day better? And I wanted to say impact someone, but I think that's too big of a word for them. So I said, so what are some ways you can make somebody's day better? Holding the door, smiling at them, complimenting them, telling them you like their shoes, or whatever. And then on the way home, I say, so did you make someone's day better today? And as of now, they only groan at me, but I'm hoping they will start to hear that and at least think of it or see opportunities throughout their day.
So you should try this out. I did this with Kellen. I took a sticky note and I wrote one act of kindness and I put that in his lunchbox. And I'll randomly do that every once in a while. And so, even if they're thinking about it, there are so many things to think about when you're a kid. And if you at least just even think about the thought of kindness for an ounce, it matters.
I love that. Well, we know we cannot protect all of our kids from every bully because we know that kids being mean to each other is just part of development. But what we can do is teach them how to ask themselves those growth-minded questions, how to have empathy for other people. And when we give them credit for learning these skills, even at a young age, I think we're teaching a whole new generation how to live in a growth-minded world rather than a fixed world.
Beautiful.
So any other thoughts for any moms out there who have kids who are getting picked on? Is there something that you'd like to leave them with?
Patience. I'm going to put my dad hat on here. It's very hard to have patience in moments of high emotions. And so just a subtle practice of patience in those moments make a big difference, because I can think about how I would feel if Kellen came home crying every day. You can just imagine like the bubbles boiling, right? And so it's very natural to get upset, angry, make a rash decision. Even when we're trying to coach our kids about doing something, it doesn't come out right because we're already experiencing frustration. And so what would it look like to practice patience? And, it could come in the form of just hearing, walking away for a minute, maybe practicing some type of meditation for like 3 minutes and then coming back to the situation. And that sounds easier said than done. Meditation in general is hard for people to shut their minds off. But I think patience allows us to actually teach with a clear mind. So
absolutely. Two last questions for you. You've named one book that you love, but as you are growing into this growth mindset and really developing that inner strength and letting go of the internalization of that negativity from when you were a kid that was still impacting you, what are some of your favorite books, things that you've read that have really been helpful?
Yes. So every book by Seth Godin I read. And so he's a well-renowned marketing guru. He runs an all-MBA program, which I was fortunate to go through. I read anything that he writes about on LinkedIn and books. But some of my favorite books right now, I'm reading Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. He also wrote a book about bounce, which is very, very interesting. The Black Box Thinking is the concept of, it contrasts the medical industry and the aviation industry and how the implementation of a black box in airplanes to learn about mistakes, because, and this is a whole nother topic, but how we choose to not actually talk about mistakes and learn from them. We choose to skate around them. And so the whole book is around the people and the organizations that do that grow the fastest versus the ones that choose to discount mistakes, don't ever learn from them. And so it's a very, very interesting book. A Beautiful Constraint is amazing. It talks about everything that we do in life that holds us back, the fearful questions, the initial constraints and obstacles that we have, and then what is the moment in our brain where we choose to make a decision. And that is an awesome book. I'm trying to think if there's one more. Simon Sinek are really good books that I always typically grab. There's a short read book that I always recommend to everybody just because it's fun and engaging, but it's called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And he's got 2 books that he writes, and I'm showing you, I know maybe the audience will be able to see, but it's got like graphics and pictures, but it's very succinct. And so it's a New York Times bestseller and it's awesome. And so that's a good one too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And as you are continuing to grow, but not just grow yourself, you're teaching what you're learning through your companies to people, adults and kids consistently. What are some things that you do every day that you couldn't live without that help keep you filled?
Yeah. I get up at 4 a.m. and I lift weights and listen to books. I'm a book listener, which actually allows me to read pretty close to like 30 books a year, which is awesome. And then I go to hot yoga, and I joke with students in class because whenever I say that, I usually get a few chuckles. And I think I get a few chuckles because it's the same mindset that I had, which is when my wife got me into hot yoga, I was like, there's no way I'm going. Nope, I'm not going to be the only guy in the studio. No way, guy. And this is just stereotyping, but guys don't do yoga. And there was a moment there where I was like one of 2 guys only in the yoga studio. But I love it so much because besides the physicality, it's the only it's the full hour of my day where I force myself to mentally be prepared for the day. And so that is a huge part of my morning. And I will practice gratitude for at least 15 minutes every morning too. I will do 30 minutes of meditation. And so I'll do a little bit of a promotion on this one. So there's a Human 2.0 podcast out there. And the only reason I'm sharing this one right now is I came across this guy in this podcast, and one huge, powerful interview that they did was a conglomeration of 3 successful people on meditation. And it was incredible. It was literally just a 10-minute listen, but it was about letting like the inner light shine and like the reasons that the same things come back to us every day that we want to change, whether that's financial problems, growth, business, sales, whatever it is. It's typically because we're kind of holding the light in on ourselves and we're attracting that. And so I thought that was like one of the most powerful messages I've ever learned, I've ever heard. And because of that, I've been a little bit more intently on meditating.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for continuing to say yes to your dreams. A lot of people learn, but not everybody learns and teaches and shares what they learn to make the world around them better. So thank you, Troy, for sharing your message with us today and with schools all around the country. And if you guys are interested in learning a bit more about him, his message, or you want him to speak at your school or community or event, go to troy-rice.com and all of the information will be in the show notes below. So thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I want to hear your aha moment from today's amazing episode. If you could leave a review at whatever podcast player you choose to listen from, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening from, leave a review and share with us your favorite part of today's episode. Thanks for hanging out, and remember to dream big.